Today on With the First Pick, we are one day away from the 2025 NFL Draft. That's Ran Carthon, former Titans GM. I'm Ryan Wilson. And Rand, we are going to do one last mock draft prior to the 2025. This is what we think NFL teams will actually do 32 hours from now. And the funny thing is, we actually made these picks ahead of time just so we could get the graphics like we wanted them. And we did those picks 20 hours ago, I think it was. And I feel like we both talked to people and things have already changed. And we'll talk about those things that have changed that we've heard, give you a little rumor scoops as we get through this thing. But first up, this has been a done deal for what feels like weeks, maybe even months. Cam Ward's going number one. There's no debate about that. There have been some reports that teams have tried to trade up for Tennessee. I don't even know what the draft haul would have to be to come off of that if you need a quarterback, right?
Right, and I mean, at this point, we've been talking about this for months. We've seen this for months. And Tennessee GM Mike Borgonzi came out yesterday and said, we're taking the pick. We're gonna pick. So there's that. Cam's going to the Titans, moving right along.
Right, there's nothing to see here, and we're on to pick number two. And pick number two is where things suddenly get very interesting because it feels like even 48 hours ago, we were talking about picks 1 through 3 and maybe even 4 feel like they're set. But I've heard, and you've heard similar things, that there have been more than one team interested in trying to get to number 2. Our number 2 here, we have Travis Hunter going because it just makes sense. He's the best player in this draft class in terms of the fewest questions, in my mind at least. And the Browns need help at a lot of places, and he's a 2-for-1 deal. But there's also a possibility, would you still agree, that maybe the Browns are willing to move off of this?
Yeah, and you always have to listen, and that's the point of coming in and having these positions. And, you know, Andrew Berry's always been a guy that's going to build through the draft and accumulate draft picks, and they've done a really good job of that and hitting on guys. And so they have to listen to these calls because, like you said, what type of haul are you going to receive going up to 1? 2 is just as valuable. But Travis is a great fit here. Wouldn't totally discount Abdul Carter, maybe. Okay. However, but Travis, like you said, fits both holes on offense and defense.
And it feels like whichever team is trying to trade up and may eventually make their way to number 2, that feels like a Travis Hunter situation, not Abdul Carter. Do you agree with that?
I would potentially say for Abdul. I would think so because I think he is the one guy that people will try to come up for, especially these teams that need edge. And this is a heavy class in the edge, and we're going to see a lot of guys as we go through this list from the edge position that we have as first-round picks.
Do we feel comfortable, even though we've locked this in as what we think will actually happen in mock draft, do we feel comfortable Cleveland Travis is going to be the eventuality?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
All right. But there'll be some conversations between now and then in terms of Andrew Berry's phone probably blowing up a little bit. Next up, the New York Giants are at 3. And again, this is what we've been talking about for at least a few days here. It feels like Abdul Carter if he's there. And it feels like Travis Hunter if he's there. It does not feel like Shedeur Sanders. So Cam Ward won't be there, so we don't have to worry about that. But does it still feel like Abdul Carter will be the pick for the Giants?
I think the Giants are in a position, whoever's there available for them, whether it's Travis or Abdul, I think they're equally happy to have both. It's for, if you're Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator with the Giants, you're happy either way because you get a star-studded player that can come in and immediately bolster your defense.
So you have Brian Burns, we'll have Kayvon Thibodeau from a few years ago, the first-round pick. You have Sexy Dexy on the inside, and you have Abdul Carter. And that doesn't fix your offense or your quarterback situation. But they're in a better situation, the Giants are, with Russ Wilson and Jameis than some other teams that need quarterbacks, including, I think, the Cleveland Browns and, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who we'll talk about in a little bit here. But a dominating defense can go a long way in helping out any quarterback, right?
I mean, you look at the tradition of the Giants, and this is what they've been known as, a defensive-minded team, and the offense just had to take care of the football and score points when needed. When they had their Super Bowl runs back when Eli was the quarterback, they had dominant defenses and dominant defensive fronts. And so I think they probably want to get back there. And they have, if they want to come back in and get a quarterback, they have the space to do it, having an early second-round pick.
Yeah, and at the end of the show, if you want to hang around to see that, we'll talk about best players available that don't go in the top 32, that perhaps slip into round 2, but could be targets for teams trading back up into round 1, because a lot of teams picking to the top of the second round have some quarterback needs. Next up, the New England Patriots. Again, this is feel like a rubber stamp situation with Will Campbell as the tackle at LSU. I think the Patriots are listening to phone calls as well, but Will Campbell, we still feel pretty good about that?
Yeah, you feel good about it.
Yeah.
Now, if a team that's in a market, you know, that's really coveting a player that they want to come up for, I could see them listening. Now, here's where you want to, where it piques your ears. What if Abdul Carter's available at 4?
You take Abdul.
Then I think that completely alters this rubber stamp, as you said,
right,
in this position. But if Will Campbell's there and Abdul is off the board, this is the easy pick for them. This is a safe, easy pick for them, and it addresses a need.
Right. Any consideration to a right tackle here, whether it's Kelvin Banks or someone else? Amram Membu might be too rich for you. They signed Morgan Moses, but he's not in the long-term plans. Rodarian Lowe, he's not the long-term answer at left tackle. But would that be a consideration if you like Kelvin Banks a little better?
I would say no.
Okay.
I would say no in terms of a right tackle.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe whether they like Will Campbell or if it's Kelvin Banks, they're going to play left tackle.
Right.
And you're going to have Morgan Moses as that anchor in that offensive line room, that veteran leader, to be over there on the right side. So I see that it's harder to get your cornerstone left tackle than it is to find a right tackle, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Unless you're going to make Drake Maythrow left-handed, and then the right side will be the blind side. All right, here's where things get spicy at pick 5. Forever this has been the Jacksonville Jaguars, and forever we've had Mason Graham going there. There's a situation where neither actually happened tomorrow night at 8 p.m. We have the Ben Johnson Chicago Bears traded from 10 to 5. Who are they taking?
They are going with Ashton Jeanty, and that will give Ben Johnson his 1-2 punch that he likes to have in the backfield and what he's become used to, and having his Sonic and Knuckles backfield that he's had in Detroit. And it's a really good pick for him. And everything that you're hearing right now from Chicago is that even if it's at pick 10 and Genty's there, he's not getting past them at 10. And there are some teams within this range, within this 5 to 10 range, who are allegedly have interest in Jeanty. So why not jump up and get him and get your guy?
If you're the Dallas Cowboys at 12 and Genty's there at 9, are you calling Mickey Loomis in New Orleans?
You have to. You have to call and see. Now, this is something we talked about yesterday on air. A little fun fact about Mickey Loomis and his draft history. Mickey Loomis, since being the GM in New Orleans since 2007, he's never traded back.
So you got to trade the pot.
So you're going to have to really pique his interest and give him a lot picks to make him want to do it. Now, I don't know. Again, this is fodder, could be fodder, but I remember seeing something yesterday where they said that Jerry Jones kind of spoke in a tone in which he was considering going up for someone.
That doesn't sound like Jerry Jones. Come on now. I'm kidding. This sounds 100% like Jerry Jones. Any consideration to this? And I know I can hear our buddy Joe Musso, Bears fan, saying, stay at 10 and take a tackle. If you were the Chicago Bears, Kelvin Banks is still there. Everyone is still there except Will Campbell along the offensive line. Is Ashton Jeanty make the Bears team better in 2025 than an offensive lineman?
I would say no. Just because of where we are from a depth perspective in this running back class, that you could get not a same level of talent guy, but if you're going to use him in a way that you're going to be alternating, you can find another complement in a later round, as opposed to taking this early. And when you can solve one of your long-term issues, which is your left tackle position, immediately at pick 10 if you're still there.
So that's the math you have to figure out in the draft room. We'll see how this actually plays out, but this is what we think is going to happen, so we got to stick to it, even though it's funny that even in the hour since we've done this, I think we would change the picks if we had to do it over again, right?
Oh, yeah, we could totally redo this whole list if we knew what we know now, or what we're hearing now.
But that's life. That ain't just mock drafts. All right, next up, Joe Musso is going to throw his television out the window because Kelvin Banks is going to go off the board to 6 to the Las Vegas Raiders. And that's a development because we've talked a lot about Ashton Jeanty, Tet McMillan here. Offensive line hasn't been a real conversation piece, but they have some needs at offensive line.
Yeah, they do. And I will say, and you would think that they're, based off the mock draft, they're taking Kelvin Banks here because Ashton Jeanty's off the board. But everything that I've been getting is that they are leaning heavy towards offensive line right here at pick 6. And so Kelvin Banks would be the optimum fit because Colton Miller, their starting left tackle, he'll be a free agent following the season. He recently came out and said he was not coming to voluntary offseason workouts, which on one hand you may not, care too much because he's a veteran, he's a captain. However, he's been injured the last couple seasons, and again, he will be a free agent following the season, and he's entering a year in which his contract features no guaranteed money. So why not have someone in the hopper that he may play right early, but could be your left next year and for the future moving forward?
And it's going to be fun to watch. We keep hearing that this draft class isn't very good, but the behind-the-scenes Game of Thrones maneuvering actually makes it interesting whether you love these players or not. And as I am guilty, I love all these players. So I'm happy with where they are. All right, next up, the Jets at number 7. And again, this has been a popular landing spot for Armand Membu. We haven't taken Tyler Warren. There's been some buzz that they like Tyler Warren. There's been some buzz that they like Jahdae Barron as well, but I don't think Jade's going to go this high. So they settle on Warren to help out their young quarterback in Justin Fields. Too high? Do you like this fit? What do you think of Tyler Warren here?
No, I like the fit, and it gives Justin Fields another big weapon to throw to, a guy that can adjust on the move, a guy that has really good ball skills, and it gives Justin Fields another weapon down the middle of the field. Now, they do have love for the tackle position here, and I think it just will come down to, in their minds, the best available player between Tyler Warren and one of the tackles.
And if I understand your evaluation correctly, you think Tyler Warren's a better right tackle than Armand Membu. Is that correct?
Yes, Ryan.
Disrespect to my guy Armand, 20 years old, trying to mind his own business out here. All right, pick 8, Carolina Panthers. And I love the idea, and you floated this yesterday, of Derek Brown lining up next to Mason Graham. 20 hours later, I don't know if it's going to happen. But if he's sitting there at 8, certainly you have to give serious consideration if you're Carolina to taking Mason Graham.
Yeah, you have to. You have to, because they were in the mix for Milton Williams and had a verbal deal done before he flipped and chose to go to New England. And they came off of that and signed Bobby Brown to a 3-year deal, which is still a different level of player than what Mason Graham can be. Now, as of late, they are considering moving back. And I know that Jalen Walker is very much still in play for them here at pick 8. But if there's a team that is sitting below them that has a need at defensive tackle in that, let's say from 8 to 13 range that's looking to come up, this could be a spot for them to come up to Carolina and get Mason Graham.
Love it. So much intrigue, and it's literally changing by the hour, it feels like. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at those picks, 8 through 13, teams that could potentially be interested in moving up. We'll talk about who we have them taking in our last mock draft of the 2025 draft cycle right after this. Welcome back to With the First Pick. Ran Carthon, Ryan Wilson. It's our final mock draft of the 2025 draft cycle. Not to worry, Ran. Next week we'll be doing a 2026 mock draft. I am not kidding. But for now, let's stay in the present moment and just enjoy this. We've got picks 1 through 8 already. Pick 9, New Orleans Saints. There's been a lot of Shedeur Sanders chatter probably up to the last 48 hours. This feels like offensive line, and we had them taking Armand Membu, the right tackle. Ryan Ramczyk retired. Trevor Pitting has struggled, the former first-round pick. So we have Membu headed to New Orleans, and he feels like a day-one starter. But I want to get to pick 10 because we had the Chicago Bears trading up from 10 to 5, had the Jacksonville Jaguars trading down from 5 to 10. Of course, the Bears took Ashton Jeanty. And at pick 10, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars helping out Trevor Lawrence with Tedero McMillan. That feels like a best-case scenario because you're getting draft capital and you're getting a dude who can be the X and play opposite Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what they need. And I'm pretty sure that that's what Trevor Lawrence wants is another viable receiver opposite of Brian Thomas Jr., so you don't have to have coverages rotated over to him so much. And you have an offensive-minded new head coach. Right. So why not bolster what he does well by giving him a weapon here? And if Jacksonville isn't able to move from 5 or no one's interested in moving up to 5, I don't think it's out of the realm for them to take Tet at pick number 5.
I agree. And there's been a lot of variability in terms of where media folk view Tet. When I talk to folks in the league, they generally tend to agree that he's wide receiver 1. The question just is how high will he end up going?
And he may not get past 12.
Exactly. And the Cowboys are in a curious spot because offensive line makes sense there, running back Jeanty makes sense there, and of course Ted McMillan makes sense there. We'll talk about them in just a moment here. First up at 11, the San Francisco 49ers are on the clock. They need a ton of help because they moved on from a ton of guys, and if I recall correctly, they have a ton of picks. So they may end up being one of those teams that uses double-digit picks in this draft or maybe try to package them to move up for players they want. Pick 11, we have them taking Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. They could also go linebacker here, maybe defensive back. We'll see, but we think Walter Nolan as of yesterday. I feel 48% good about that pick now, but that's okay. At pick 12, you talked about wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. We had them taking Matthew Golden, who was our wide receiver 2, excluding Travis Hunter, had a fantastic year for the Texas Longhorns, I want to call them the Houston Texans. The Houston transfer had a really good year there, 4.29 40. He doesn't play 4.29, but like I say all the time, only Tyreek plays 4.29.
Listen, it's in his profile forever.
That's right.
That he ran 4.29.
Producer Sharon, this is coming from 438 over here. So
thank you, Sharon.
All right, next up at pick 13, it's Matthew Golden's teammate going to the Miami Dolphins. And let's talk quickly about this because Miami maybe is in the offensive line business. They have Patrick Paul to replace Teron Armstead at the left side right now, but we have them going with Jahdae Barron because they have a cornerback need as well. It sounds like Jalen Ramsey's played his last snap in Miami. How do you like this fit? Jahdae Barron going to the Dolphins.
I mean, it's a good fit for their defense. And again, you have another versatile guy that can play outside on some of the early downs, and you kick him inside in the nickel, much like they do with Jalen Ramsey. They move Jalen Ramsey all around for matchup purposes, and you could do the same with Jahdae.
You know I'm going to bring this up because this is my thing, apparently. Do you care that a cornerback has 29-inch arms? Why you
Listen,
laughing?
I thought we were off the arm length topic because you've taken in our previous mock drafts several guys with short arms. I'm
team short arm.
I thought you grew, and so it wouldn't be a question anymore.
You know what's funny, man? My mother-in-law used to call me T-Rex since she thought I had short arms. Disrespectful from her, too. Do you care? Is that a thing in terms of the analytics sitting in these draft meetings? Do short arms and cornerbacks, is that as big a deal as having 32-inch arms for an offensive lineman?
Previously, I would have said no.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if you get in the hip, but I've seen over recent years where you have guys, and I won't name them, where they're in hip pockets and they can make a play on the ball, and just your lack of length won't allow you to get there. And so it will play a role, but he's played his whole career with these 29-inch arms, and we're talking about him here at pick 13.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about it. I just bring it up because I know sometimes in the analytics conversations, that's one of the things that people know. That said, you see Suvon Revel at ECU, and he can tie his shoes standing up sort of thing. So that helps at 6'4" in terms of makeup speed and the things we talk about down the field. All right, pick 14, the Indianapolis Colts. I think we agree they have their eye on a tight end as well, but we have them taking Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama. Is he a zone guard? Because I keep hearing that he can't do that. He's obviously a gap scheme guy the way he played at Alabama, and that fits in Indianapolis. Do you think he can play in a zone scheme?
Maybe a tight zone, maybe not so much as a wide zone, just because of the aiming points and the tracking points that you have to get to. But we're talking about a guy that if you put him in the interior of this offensive line for Indianapolis, and you having quarterback issues, you now have shored up and have the ability to set firm pockets that will give these young quarterbacks room to step up.
Does that feel like a quicker solution to an Anthony Richardson growth development type thing over, say, a tight end, if they went tight end here?
Well, I would say this, and I would counter the tight end pick, and I understand it, right? Because if you want to look at history, and I was with these Colts teams when you had the 3 receivers and Marvin Reggie and Stoke, and then you had Dallas Clark and Edge in the backfield. However, you still have 3 viable receivers in Indianapolis now, and you have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. Are there enough balls to go around
That's a good point.
to get to this tight end versus shoring up the offensive line and giving these young quarterbacks who are competing for this job the best opportunity to show what they can do?
No, I agree with that, and that's a good point. Pick 15, the Atlanta Falcons are on the clock, and edge rush feels like the direction they're going to go. And we give them BPA/edge rush here, and Jalen Walker out of Georgia. And I say /BPA because he can play off ball as well. 6'1", 245-ish, 248. Does this make more sense than, say, a James Pierce Jr., who we know they have interest in, who has the off-field concerns?
I would tell you what, if Jalen Walker is there at pick 15 for Atlanta, I think Arthur Blank would run the cart to Green Bay himself and to get that pick in. We're talking about a Georgia boy, you're bringing him home, and you're putting him in a Raheem Morris defense. Like, enough said. Raheem will have plenty of ways to use this young man and get him on the field. It would be a spot if you start to see Jalen fall. I wonder if they would be willing to go up to ensure that they would get him. But if Jalen isn't there, it's going to be an edge guy. It's going to be an edge guy, and it could very well be James Pierce. It could very well be Mykel Williams or Mike Green. They came out in droves as an organization for Mike Green's pro day. So all 3 of those guys fit, but it will be an edge guy there at pick 15.
Jalen Walker, by all accounts, had great interviews at the Combine, a great teammate, off the field clean, and obviously I think his arrow's pointing up when we talk about him as a football player. And then finally, before we take another break here, pick 16, we're halfway through this thing, the Arizona Cardinals. They can go in any number of directions. They can go offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver. Fans typically don't like the idea of wide receiver in these mock drafts, so I have good news for them. We're going with Will Johnson, who, if this were a year ago and we said Will Johnson's going in the middle of the first round, you would ask us if we were smoking something, but he didn't run throughout the pre-draft process. He had the turf toe injury the second half of the season at Michigan. This could end up being a steal if we're willing to accept the fact that he may not be the fastest guy on the field, but based on his 2023 tape.
Yeah, and if you look at what their defense needs, and they need corners, but they like tall, long guys, and that fits the mold of what Jonathan Gannon wants to do on defense. So Will Johnson is a great fit. And to combat the quote-unquote lack of speed, again, this is tapping into your resources, going to Michigan, and finding out what the GPS times were and how he played in those situations.
Yeah, and I agree. And if you watch several of his pick sixes, no one was running them down. So he's at least faster than everyone else chasing them on his way to the end zone.
Play speed.
Play speed. Apparently that's important.
Yes.
438, you hit it here first. All right, we're halfway through this mock draft. We're going to come back after the break and talk about what the Cincinnati Bengals are going to do with pick 17 right after this. Welcome back to With the First Pick, our final mock draft of the 2025 draft cycle, which means it'll be fresh for another 29 or so hours before we get the truth. I'll be honest, this is what we think will actually happen. I don't feel great about the first 16 picks in the 20 hours since we actually did this and put this together. I feel a little bit better about picks 17 through 32. So let's start at the top here at 17. The Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock. Mykel Williams is still there. I think he is just scratching the surface on who he will become at the next level, and whether Trey Hendrickson, is there or not. I feel like Mykel is a direction you absolutely have to go.
Yeah, absolutely, because you have to continue to add people opposite of Trey Hendrickson. Right. And so that position hadn't been settled in recent years. And so you add in the new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, and the multiplicity of his defenses, and Mykel fits that because he could play standing up or with his hand down. On the edge, you can reduce him and kick him inside some. And so Al Golden would love to have a player of this structure, body structure, to move around his defense.
I think he was 265 during the pre-draft process. Again, he's young, so if you wanted to add 5 pounds, maybe more, maybe that'll be something to think about in the future. And you've talked before, you got to make sure the player's comfortable with that, but I think he may have the frame to do that. Pick 18. John Schneider zigs every time he thinks Seattle's going to zag. This feels like a zig, but I love it. And I think this actually has a realistic possibility of happening. Nick Emanwori, the safety out of South Carolina. This Cam Chancellor 2.0 or something more than that?
No, I think it could be a little bit more than that. It could be more like in the Kyle Hamilton genre because defensive coordinator, now head coach Mike McDonald, this is the type of safety he needs. I know some people have had corner mock there because they see the corner that they just took, and
Devin Witherspoon.
They took him 5th overall, and people see him playing inside, but he starts outside in base, and so they need that safety in the middle that can patrol the middle and line up in various spots, and I think he fits that.
Do you think he can play deep half? I do. One of our coworkers who annoys me to no end, Pete Prisco, thinks he can't play anything but coming downhill.
No, I think he can play. I think he can play deep half.
Take that, Pete. All right, next up, 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I feel like they can go in any number of directions depending on who's available. Edge rusher, off-ball linebacker feels like a fit. We have Mike Green going here, the edge rusher out of Marshall. What are some other directions they might consider, depending on what they're interested in? Like
you said, it's a BPA pick here between outside linebacker, corner, and receiver. If there's the right receiver there, I can see them going there, which who I would think would be a good fit for them, I don't see lasting that far. But if there's a receiver in that range that they like, it'll be a great compliment to that room because that room is getting a little old in Tampa.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield would certainly love that. At pick 20, I've heard some scuttlebutt that Sean Payton loves him some Ashton Jeanty, but I can't envision a situation where you're going from 20 up to 10 or higher to get a running back in Ashton Jeanty, who's a great player, when we can stay put here if you're George Payton and Sean Payton, and we have them taking Amari Hampton, running back out of UNC.
Love this kid. Love the way he runs. Love the violence. Love the physicality, the balance, the lower strength. He's a really good fit for them, and I've heard the same thing about them moving up from 20 to wherever they need to get Ashton Jeanty. Sean Payton is a gambler. He is willing to make things happen. I wouldn't put it past him.
I was talking to someone today that says Sean Payton does fall in love, but I don't know if that's too rich in terms of paying for that honeymoon, if you will. All right, pick 21. Here we go. Shedeur Sanders is still here, and this feels like a landing spot. I don't know if he gets past 21, Ran, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Shedeur Sanders, we have him going to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, can we put the watches up?
I don't have a watch.
For Shedeur.
But, you got your watch. There we go.
I'll say this, and I said this on air yesterday. Shedeur's used to consistency. Consistency in the head coach and the messaging, right? Because he's only been coached by Coach Prime. And some people see that as a knock. And what organization is the model of consistency in this league? And that's the Pittsburgh Steelers, only 3 head coaches since 1969, and Mike Tomlin is entering his 19th season as the head coach. This is an easy pick for them if he's there to take him at 21. I could see them considering a defensive tackle as well. But if Shedeur Sanders is there at 21, to me, this is an easy call.
I think it makes a lot of sense he doesn't have to play next year, number one, whatever the quarterback situation is. He can come in the middle of the season if you want. The other argument, I want to get your thoughts on this, is that it's not a good scheme fit for him. But I say all the time, he's going to have a running game and a tight end for the first time in 2 years. Do you think it makes sense in an Arthur Smith offense where can Shedeur have success in that offense?
I think so, because, again, Shedeur's game is processing.
Yeah.
It's processing, getting the ball out accurately, and he can do that. And he was going to have weapons in George Pickens and DK Metcalf that all he has to do is get these guys the ball and allow them to do their thing. And he has Freiermuth. So he has weapons around him. And like you said, this is a running game he's never had before, a tight end that he's never had before. Oh, and by the way, a good defense. And I'm not so sure that he goes at pick 21 and he's not the day one starter.
Okay.
When has Mike Tomlin ever been afraid of a challenge?
That's true. Kenny Pickett can attest to that. As a Steelers fan, that was a tough watch. One last thing before we move on. If you're Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns, any consideration to giving up pick 33 and pick 67, I think that math works out, to getting to pick 20 to get Travis at number 2 and then Shedeur at number 20?
I mean, would that not be a dream to make that happen? And you have to consider it. For Cleveland. But again, I think there's a sweet spot for Cleveland if they want to give up picks to go to that we'll talk about here in a second. However, if you're sitting there, if you're Denver, you have to consider, especially if you're considering a running back,
right,
that you're going back to 33 and you could probably still get the same guy.
Maybe.
And so, Andrew, I hope you're listening. Please listen to Ryan, and there's an opportunity for you to do it.
No, don't put it on me.
It'll be great for us over here.
There you go. Thank you. But don't put that on me because
put it on Ryan.
I got enough to worry about. All right, pick 22. The Los Angeles Chargers are sitting here, and we've heard that a defensive back might be a consideration here, but they need defensive tackle help. You talk about this to death here, and no surprise in that it's a Michigan man and Kenneth Grant going to reunite with Jim Harbaugh. And let's go to pick 23. With the Green Bay Packers. Defensive back is an obvious need. And we've heard that maybe wide receiver, if another young man happens to be available, which we don't think he will be. How do you like the fit of Maxwell Hairston going to Green Bay? Because his comp may be a little bit Jair Alexander, at least in terms of the physical presence of when he gets off the bus. Yeah,
and again, we are talking about a new defense, which is a similar defense that they run in San Francisco and what Pete Carroll is going to run in Vegas, where you have the corner who is tough and physical off the edge. And for a guy that's slight of frame, he is plenty tough, and he's not afraid to stick his face in the fan, and he can cover, and he has speed. And so this just makes a lot of sense in Green Bay, especially the weapons that he's going to have to cover in Detroit twice a year.
Absolutely. All right, pick 24 here. The Minnesota Vikings, and Rand, you can talk to them possibly trading down out of this pick. But I want to mention we have Derek Harmon, the defensive lineman out of Oregon, going here. And since we've actually did the mock draft 20 hours ago in preparation for the show here, we both heard that he has potential medical concerns that could see him drop a little bit. How far, we'll find out together. But the fact that he played the entire year, potentially hurt, speaks to how tough he is, and he played at a pretty high level. So we have defensive line help going to Minnesota here. That could change for a couple of reasons, and that Derek Harmon may slip a little bit because of those medicals that I talked about, but also because teams might be interested in coming to 24.
Absolutely. And this pick for him, and I'm glad you said toughness, because I personally think a safety fits so well right here at 24. But Minnesota could be looking to continue to get tougher inside, right, on offensive side and defensive side. So he fits from that standpoint. But if you're Minnesota and you only have 4 draft picks this year, a 1, a 3, a 5, and a 6, why wouldn't you consider trading back and gaining more draft capital? And this is what I was talking about earlier when I said a sweet spot for Andrew Berry going up from 33 to 24, not having to give up as much.
Right.
And him having a prior relationship with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, who was his VP of football operations in Cleveland prior to getting the Vikings job.
And by the way, if Shedeur somehow gets past 21, there's going to be a run on phone calls to Kwesi at 24, it feels like, because that could be a possibility for teams hitting that spot if Shedeur falls. And even if Shedeur doesn't fall, I'll ask you this before we take a break. Is Shedeur quarterback 2?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so, and I don't think it's, in my opinion, I don't think it's close.
Okay.
It just makes sense to me. And going back, even if, like you said, if Shedeur gets down to 24 and he makes it there, now Kwesi can charge a premium.
Right.
And now that gives you even more draft picks for this year, where you may walk in the draft with 4 and leave with 7. And that's a win for Minnesota.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take another quick break here, and we will hit picks 25 through 32 right after this. All right, down the home stretch here in our last mock draft of the 2025 draft cycle, and with the first pick here, picks 25 through 32. Ran, why are you smiling?
Because you just said for this last cycle.
Oh, yeah.
Knowing what's coming.
Right. That's like saying, there's your last push-up for now, and then you got to do some more push-ups.
Till your next set.
Till your next set. Pick 25, the Houston Texans. I've heard that they will sprint to the podium, as we like to say, for Kelvin Banks, for Mr. Booker, Tyler Booker. And if those guys are gone, and they're gone in this mock draft, Donovan Jackson, the left guard, left tackle for much of last season, would be their pick here. So we have him going 25. That feels, I don't want to call it a no-brainer because we haven't heard a lot of Donovan Jackson in the first round, but that feels like a pretty smart pick.
Yeah, and I've heard on the other side of that they really do have a lot of love for him.
Good.
And what they like to do. So it makes sense. And again, they have a new offensive coordinator that's going to be coming in, so it's a newer system. And I'm just curious on how much of the previous system is going to carry over. So it'll be interesting to see, but I've heard that they really like Donovan Jackson there.
Yeah, so keep an eye on that once draft night rolls around here tomorrow. Pick 26, the LA Rams are on the clock. Rams' former team, both in St. Louis and Los Angeles. We have them going with Jahad Campbell, the off-ball linebacker from Alabama. You like that pick?
I love it. It just makes so much sense. You know, especially considering you trade away Ernest Jones last year,
right,
and you struggled to replace him, and then now you have Troy Reeder and you have Omar Spates in there penciled in as your current starting linebackers. To me, that just shows a big hole that you have there. And Jahad Campbell is a talented and explosive and athletic linebacker that will fit that defense well.
Speaking of explosive and athletic, you don't typically use those terms for an offensive tackle, but Josh Simmons, we have him going the next pick, 27, to the Ravens. Injured in October in that Oregon game. Moved around pretty well at his pro day, just doing warm-up drills. He didn't take part in the pro day because he's still recovering. This feels like a Ravens pick in that he plays with a nasty edge, but also sometimes they redshirt guys that are injured and find a way to get bargains, if you will. If Josh Simmons were healthy, he might be the first offensive tackle off the board.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Like, I would be so interested to see where he ranked with the other guys had he been healthy.
Right.
One of the favorite guys, you know, that I've done this season, just watching him, watching the athleticism, watching how easy he moves, and like you said, his ability to chase the ball downfield and play through the echo of the whistle. Not to the whistle, but to the echo of the whistle. You just love the way this guy plays football and just hope that he makes a speedy recovery and he's back to 100%.
Right. This could be one of those things where, like, oh, this is such a Ravens move, and they get a steal here. All right, pick 28. This guy feels like a Brad Holmes / Dan Campbell / Chris Spielman guy. Gray Zabel, played left tackle at North Dakota State. He'll probably kick inside to guard and maybe eventually center once when and if Frank Ragnow moves on in a couple years here. Gray Zabel, any concerns about the FCS stuff? Because he went to the Senior Bowl and balled out.
No, I mean, that's just the level that he played on, and there have been a bunch of guys that have made their transition,
right,
particularly on the offensive line. They had a guy that came out there a couple years ago that went down to Tampa, and he's been a day one starter for them there. So I like this pick for them. Like you said, it's a Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes pick. My thing I'm most looking forward to is seeing whoever they pick and seeing what type of reaction we get out of their draft room if Brad is going to break the table and hug everybody in the room. So really excited to see that part.
Does defensive line, edge rush make more sense here?
Edge rush is a strong argument, for them there. And I've had them mocked at taking James Pierce Jr. there. But when you look back through Brad's history of drafting there, he's never taken anyone that had quote-unquote character concerns. And so you just wonder if they're hedging their bet on finding a guy on day 2 that fits their mold and their style of play.
Right. And edge rush feels a little deeper on day 2 than interior offensive line for sure. And maybe that's the thinking there. Pick 29, again, we did a 7-round mock draft last week, and the other tight end was available. At pick 29, Colston Loveland somehow still there. Not a huge glaring need for Washington, but you have to take in BPA situation, right?
Absolutely. And then, Zach Ertz is on a 1-year deal and likely to retire after this season. And so now you have another Zach Ertz-style player in being an F tight end that you can plug and play. And he's had some injury concerns with the shoulder, but from what I've been told is he will most likely miss the offseason program, but expected to be clear for training camp, which is the perfect time to be cleared and ready to play some football. Any
concerns about just taking mental reps during the May and June part of OTAs?
Oh, you have to. You have to. And that's what this offseason is for, and that's why it's so important for these young guys to be in that program to get all these reps and get as many as possible. And the way Dan Quinn runs his system and the way he goes about developing players and coaches, that he's going to have plenty of time and plenty of mental reps to have himself ready for training camp when it comes along.
Yeah, Colston Loveland is so much fun to watch when he's healthy. Next up, pick 30, speaking of fun to watch, Buffalo Bills. Malachi Starks feels like the perfect marriage. Bills fans will tell you that they love Taylor Rapp, and they drafted the Cole Bishop out of Utah last year. I feel like there's still room in the DB room for Malachi Starks.
Yeah, and I absolutely love Malachi Starks. And when we were talking about pick 24 to the Vikings, I thought when I said there's a guy that would be a perfect fit, I think he is the perfect fit. He's the quintessential Sean McDermott safety that can do all, that's really smart, that gets everyone aligned, very instinctive, can play the ball. Absolute great fit. I think if he's there for Buffalo at pick 30, they take him. They never look back. He starts and plays day 1.
I agree with that 100%. Next up, pick 31. Kansas City Chiefs made their way to the Super Bowl, obviously, or outlasted by the Philadelphia Eagles. We have them taking Josh Connerly Jr., the left tackle out of Oregon. And he's, in terms of the last few draft classes, I've taken Wanya Morris. They took Kingsley Sumatea last year. Neither has worked out yet. Connerly feels like a short-term project. He's not a long-term project. Athleticism through the roof. But how many projects can you take to try to figure out the left tackle position?
You got to keep swinging. You got to keep swinging.
Do you make contact?
We do this every year at other positions, right? Yeah. Teams are constantly taking quarterbacks, hitting and missing. So why not take a chance on a guy like this? This is my Armand Membu.
Okay.
This is you love Membu. I have a lot of love for Josh Connerly Jr. and his style of play, although probably not quote-unquote sexy, but he gets it done. He blocks his man at a high rate.
Insanely athletic. They had him line up at wide receiver at times on extra points. That's how good of an athlete Josh Connerly Jr. was. And finally, to round out this mock draft at pick 32, James Pierce Jr., because it feels like a Howie Roseman. This guy's sitting here. He's an insane athlete sort of pick. There are some off-field concerns. They've had guys come into that program the last few years who have had some maturity issues, some off-field concerns, and that locker room seems to have gotten everyone on the same page. And also the old saying, winning fixes a lot, probably applies as well.
Yeah, and the one thing, and I'll say this about the Philadelphia Eagles front office, we know that they're a talented group of people there, and they've won championships, and they've built the roster to show they know what they're doing. But the one thing that they do at a better rate than most front offices around the league is their player development program.
Yes.
And it's not just on the field. They have the resources in and out of the building to help these guys grow and mature. And that is a big part and a big reason why they're able to take take these guys that have risk, but then they get to Philadelphia and you don't hear anything about it. And so, and Howie came out earlier this week and he was speaking on how Big Dom plays a role in that. And so they do a really good job of developing those guys, and they have the people in their front office to get it done. And so kudos to them, and that's why they could take a James Pierce Jr. if he's there.
Yeah, it feels like you don't want to cross Big Dom in any situation. So I get that. All right, that's the first round. But we're going to take one more quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about some best players still available on day 2, and we'll find out when the next quarterback goes off the board right after this. Welcome back to With the First Pick. The mock draft is in the books. Pick 1 through 32. A little housekeeping before we get out of here, Ran. best player available, some names available at pick 33 where the Cleveland Browns find themselves. Explain to me what happens on Friday morning, the hours leading up to the start of day 2, and the phone calls that Andrew Berry can expect and what he might want to do with that first pick of the second round.
Well, the phone calls start Thursday night.
Oh, okay. No rest for the weary.
Yeah, they start Thursday night because you got to get in. You got to get in. You got to gauge the interest and see if guys are even willing. I'll give you an example. Last year, just calling around, had a conversation with Brandon Beane at pick 33 that night after the draft, driving home, and he was, "Hey man, we're going to stay put." And so now you move on if you want to move up and down. So when I was sitting in that chair, I like to gauge the interest to know if there's someone sitting there that I want to get. I can have a range in which I have to get there. But those calls will start Thursday night and carry into Friday until you work out something.
So we had the Cleveland Browns taking Travis Hunter at number 2. At pick 33, Cleveland and Andrew Berry find themselves. At pick 34, Joe Schoen and the Giants. So it sounds like if we're doing the math and Cleveland and or the Giants want a quarterback, they're not moving unless the deal is really sweet. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I would say, too, let's not forget New Orleans at 40. And I couple 33, 34, and 40 as that potential space for these guys to move up, let's just say 26 to 32.
Gotcha.
To get in there, and these teams have multiple mid-round picks that they can use to get up there without giving up a lot. Now, again, it depends on which one of these GMs that you're dealing with that could charge a premium. But like we talked about in the earlier segment, you're sitting there at 24 if you're Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and you only have 4 draft picks and you know teams are coming up to get a quarterback. You got leverage. And so you can hedge your bet there and get more picks.
So any way on planet Earth, I'm just looking here at the best available players. Like Nick Scorton's still out there. Shamar Stewart's still out there. If you're the Cleveland Browns, would you go Travis Hunter and Shamar Stewart at 33? Would that be in the cards?
I would have to address this quarterback position.
Okay.
I would have to address this quarterback position because, again, you can have Travis, and I'm pretty sure they want to play him at receiver earlier. Right. You still have to get him the ball. You still have to have someone to consistently get him the ball. And if you're going there and you're going defense and you're going to pass rusher, like I get all of that. But for once and all in Cleveland, you have to settle this quarterback position. They've had, 30-some-odd starting quarterbacks since the team came back in, 99?
99.
You got to fix it.
Yeah.
You got to fix it. I'm tired of seeing the jersey of the guy that's constantly changing out the names and the numbers on the back.
No, I get that. All right. Who was the first quarterback drafted after the first round? We had Cam going 1, had Shedeur going 21. Well, there's 33, 34, 40 to one of these 3 teams. Who is the next quarterback to hear their name called?
My money's on Dart.
Jackson
Dart. I just think it just makes too much sense, and he's had private workouts with most of these teams that are quarterback needy, or they were at his pro day, one or the other. And I just think one of these teams will make a move to go up and get him.
And the other question is, does Jackson Dart make his way into the first round?
I think so because, again, when you're trying to get these quarterbacks done, and now with what these quarterbacks are making, it's almost cheaper to take a flyer on them in the first round knowing that you got that 5th-year option as opposed to taking a guy in the second round who can renegotiate his deal after 3 and you're going to have to pay him way more before.
Yeah, that makes sense until you're the Steelers and you take Kenny Pickett, and then you got to trade him. I'm just saying, there's other side.
They got off the deal.
They did get off the deal. All right, one last thing before we get out of here. We got 30 seconds here. 39.5. That's the draft spot. 40 is where the Saints find themselves. Does Tyler Shough go above 40 or after 40?
I think he goes after 40.
Okay. All right, thank you. Some reasonableness in the last few seconds here. That is it for us here at With the First Pick. We're going to be here Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Thanks to everyone who joins us. Scan that QR code to continue to join us for the next few nights for the 2025 NFL Draft.